What's up, everybody? Guy here, and let's get this straight right off the top. I'm brought to you by Puesto. If you are going to the Niner game this week, Niners Chiefs, you got to go to one of the two Puesto Mexican Artisan Kitchen locations inside of Levi Stadium. I love it. You'll love it. You'll thank me. You will be welcome with open arms. Go check out Puesto. All right, here we go. Me and Larry Krueger talking Niners. I went on his Can Be Our Night radio show, Niners Nightly, in addition to his YouTube channel that you know about, Niners Nightly on Can Be Our, and we dive into some stuff. So we'll get to that. And then I got some what I'm watching for this weekend outside of the Niners game. We'll get to that coming up. Talking Niners with Larry Krueger. Let's hit it.
What do you think? I mean, they're 3-3 now. They just beat a Seattle team that really was struggling. I mean, that was playing their third game in 11 days, and they just looked kind of fatigued. And now here comes Kansas City. Do you look at the Niners and say 3-3, first place in the NFC West, all is right with the world, or do you have legitimate concerns going into this game with Kansas City?
I have legitimate concerns, but I also look at the Niners and go, look at the NFC. Just look at the whole thing. Like, all is right with the world with who? Minnesota, 5-0 Vikings. They're going to the Super Bowl. Not that the Niners are a walk to the NFC Championship game. They're not, but there just is not a powerhouse in the NFC this year. Atlanta, Washington, like those are your 1, 2, 3 seeds right now. The NFC North has barely played itself, so a lot's going to change there. But Detroit lost Aiden Hutchinson yesterday. Green Bay and Philly and Dallas, there's just a lot to figure out. So it's the right year to not have it figured out if you're the 49ers. Now, the flip side of that is if they had it figured out, they could run away with this thing, depending on how things play out in the NFC North. But I just think we're going to look at the NFC standings in a month, and definitely in 2 months, and it's going to look pretty different than it does right now. And obviously Detroit is worse off than they were 2 days ago, and I think for a lot of people they were the primary threat to the 49ers. And they're in a much better division than the 49ers are in. Meaning, if you win the NFC West, then you're potentially hosting Detroit in the first round of the playoffs. So they got a lot to figure out. But the good news is they picked the right year because go look at the AFC, Larry. Kansas City, Houston, Baltimore, Buffalo. Those are your top 4 right now. Look back in 2 months, those will probably still be the top 4. At least 3 of those teams, right, will probably be in the top 4. But the NFC is a whole different story.
Well, and the NFC West is such a circus. I mean, I was looking at point differentials today. Niners are plus 32. Seattle is minus 4. Arizona's been outscored by 30, and the Rams are minus 45. So, I mean, this is just absolutely the right division. DVOA stats are interesting too to me. Offense, the Niners are 4. Defense, they're 5. Special teams, they're 31. 31st in DVOA special teams. 4 on offense, 5 on defense, 31 on special teams. I was looking it up to see how many teams are, maybe top 5 in both offense and defense DVOA after 6 weeks. And I was surprised. Only 2. The 49ers and the Lions are the only teams that have a top 5 offensive ranking and defensive ranking DVOA. So whatever that means, but it just shows that the 49ers and the Lions are 2 of the more complete football teams. And now you just mentioned Aiden Hutchinson. If he's not done for the year, he probably is done for a good portion of the year. And that's a huge blow. That's an absolutely huge blow to the Lions. Who would you say, like in the conference after this weekend, kind of who are you keeping your eyes on in this conference? Because Eagles won, but I mean Sirianni's challenging the fans. I mean he's probably fired before the end of the year. I don't think it's going to end well at all if you take on the fans. The Commanders played well this weekend, but they lost to the Ravens. Tampa suddenly can score tons of points, and their defense is kind of scary. What do you think of the conference coming out of Week 6?
I think Green Bay has to be the team you pick, right? They have 2 losses, one on U.S. soil, and that was to Minnesota. And then they lost to Philly and Brazil Week 1, and And Jordan Love got hurt and then came back and threw 4 touchdowns. They blew out Arizona. They did what you're supposed to do to the Cardinals. They have a huge game this week. They play the Texans at home. You know, they win that game, they're 5-2 with Jacksonville coming up. Chance to be 6-2. Then they play the Lions. Let's just say they lose. I think they probably win, but let's say they lose. Then they hit their bye. Then they play the Bears. So, you know, they're at, I mean, well, actually, let's not say they lose. Let's say they win the next 3 games and they're, 7-2, playing the Bears 8-2 before the Niners, or they lose that game, they're 7-3 playing the Niners in late November. So, like, that's got to be the team, right? They pushed the Niners to the limit last year. I think we kind of not forgot about them, but kind of looked them off a little bit early in the year because Love got hurt. I mean, their 2 losses are by a combined 6 points. So I think that's got to be the team that probably feels like they're I don't want to say they're hiding in the weeds because they're not, but with the Aiden Hutchinson injury, I mean, they got to feel like maybe they're the squad. I think the Packers have to be looking around at the NFC saying all the same stuff I just said about the Niners, except they're 4-2 instead of 3-3, and they're not playing the Chiefs this week.
Yeah, no, and Dobbs came back this week off suspension. He had 2 touchdowns, and their young receivers are all impressive. Jaden Reed scored. Watson had a long touchdown. They outrushed Arizona 179-89.
And you know what?
2 in turnovers.
You know what, Larry, too? Like, back to your point on Philly, it was so funny to see Sirianni screaming at Browns fans. And then did you see the clip? You know, Fox, like, after all the games.
He's screaming at Eagles fans.
Well, he's screaming at fans, but did you see, you know, Fox will play, like, locker room footage after all the games are done on Sunday? And they cut to the Eagles locker room, and he's like, you know, good job, men. Hungry and humble. Hungry and humble. I'm like, what are you talking about? Humble. So the thing with the Packers is they've got a good quarterback and a good coach. You know, I think when you think about now, Detroit's interesting because they got a tough coach and a good OC, but you know, Dallas is flawed, and they've always been a little flawed. They've been good, but also flawed with McCarthy.
Dallas is done.
Well, yeah, whether they're done or not, like I just know head to head, Kyle Shanahan beats Mike McCarthy, right?
Sure.
You know, whereas LaFleur almost beat him last year. Dan Campbell almost beat him last year. So I even say what you. I mean, we all kind of joke about the Eagles, but you know, they can still get you. I give them a little more credit than I give Dallas, even with the Sirianni flaw. But at the end of the day, Sirianni's it's a problem, right? It's a coaching mismatch.
Tampa scares me. The way the weapons they have and some of the great individual defensive players they have. If they can, you know, the Niners have them on the schedule. If they can continue to score the way they're scoring, they're going to be tough. What do Ricky Pearsall?
Real quick, Larry, just real quick. Like, there's a difference between putting up points in the regular season and being able to win in the playoffs with Baker.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I don't.
Totally.
They can beat you in the regular season.
They just have so many good players now.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
That's a pretty good team, actually. If you go right down the list, pretty good. You know, the GM there is pretty good. He's done a nice job.
I just go to quarterback. Like, who is beating you in the playoffs? If you're the team that is not this, you know, like, are they or aren't they verging? But you get to the playoffs, you win the division. Like, who's really beating you? You know, is Baker beating you?
I don't think Baker's beating the Niners in the playoffs. I don't see that. I just don't. I mean, you know, maybe anything can happen, but I don't see that necessarily. Brock Purdy is playing really well. Really well. If I say to you, what is Brock Purdy's greatest trait?
Yeah.
Is it accuracy? Is it mobility?
No,
Is it processing? Is it courage under fire? Is it humility? What is the? I mean, he's a pretty humble guy.
I know.
What's Brock's greatest? What's the trait that Brock has that's the greatest of his traits?
I think it's his feel in the pocket.
Player.
Yeah, I think it's his pocket feel. I think it's his ability to move. I thought that ball that he threw to Debo for the 74-yard touchdown against Arizona or against Seattle, the way he just subtly moves to his right in the pocket You know, I think, and you and I have talked about this because you watch a lot of college football and you scout players. And I think whether it's Saturday or Sunday, especially young quarterbacks on Sundays, it's really hard to hang in the pocket. And football is filled with quarterbacks that leave the pocket before they should and create a more difficult situation for themselves because they leave the pocket prematurely. And I think if you watch Brock, he almost never leaves the pocket before he has to. I think one of the reasons he's such an effective runner is because he doesn't leave the pocket early. So when he does decide to leave, routes have been run. Like, players are down the field. Guys are in scramble mode. They're pulling their defender away from him. And so I think it creates space for him to go. He's a really patient runner in that way. And I think that, you know, that and his processing / anticipate, you know, being able to throw with anticipation, which he has to be able to do. Any quarterback without an Aaron Rodgers arm, you have to be able to throw with anticipation. So I would say those things are really, I think his feel in the pocket is, I mean, as good as it gets. Like, I don't think it's his best trait. I think it's, I mean, it is. I don't think it's just his best trait. I think it's among the best traits in NFL quarterbacking right now is his pocket feel. The one area where he hasn't thrived in big spots, and we saw it on 3rd and 4 at the 2-minute warning of the Super Bowl last year when they brought pressure, he had to throw hot, and the ball gets batted. We saw it on 3rd down in the red zone in the Super Bowl where Chris Jones came free and that play never gets off, though that's a little different. We saw it in the Arizona game when the Niners were trying to run a 2-minute drill at the end of the game and Kittle's open, and at the last second they bring a defensive back blitzing off his blind side between the guard and the tackle, and he doesn't get the play off. You know, those would be the biggest moments where I think you want to see him kind of put together a season where you got, you know, 4 comeback drives late in the game, something like that. But, you know, that's just now we're talking about being perfect. But I would say his pocket feel.
You know, his accuracy is great. The mobility, he averaged 5 yards a game against Seattle, very, very strong. He had a 142.6 quarterback rating against pressure in this game against Seattle.
And he got
so he just kind of laughed at. Yeah, like, and he just kind of laughed in the face of the pressure.
He's 6th in the league in the percentage of his dropbacks that he's pressured on. He's getting pressured a ton, Larry.
Oh, he is. Oh, I know. No, and that's, you know, part of the, I laugh when people are like, he's playing hero ball. Oh my God. You kidding me? He's getting pressured a lot. His receivers aren't getting a lot of separation. He's doing what he can to survive. It is amazing though. Russell Wilson was in Seattle. The Niners couldn't beat him. He was this smaller than normal quarterback who just kept making all these incredible plays and just beat the Niners like a drum. And then suddenly the Niners get their version of Russell Wilson. And now Brock Purdy's 5-0 against Seattle. He's 9.8 yards per attempt, 11 touchdowns, 2 picks in the 5 games. Average margin of victory is like 13.5 points a game. I mean, he's just totally, it's like Russell moved on. The Niners couldn't beat Russell. And now the Niners have Purdy, who's very similar to Russell. And now the Seahawks can't beat Purdy. The thing that I wanted to get your thoughts on, though, in this game was that the Niners ran play action almost 30% of their dropbacks. And Purdy's numbers on the play action were awesome. Like 106 yards, a touchdown, and a 135.4 rating. And he's been great throughout his career on play action, and yet they've used a whole lot less play action this year than ever before. I mean, I almost feel like that begs the question to Shanahan. Why did you guys get away from play action when you have the ultimate play action pass quarterback?
Oh, I don't have a theory. Do you have a theory on that? I mean,
I really don't.
The one thing I looked at the other day, they have by a small margin, but by a margin, by like 3% more pass attempts when leading by 10 points this year than the last 2 years. So it all just feels a little different this year, for better or worse. You know, I know there's a lot of people who, at the idea of the Niners becoming a more pass-heavy team than they've been under Kyle Shanahan, love that. I don't love it. It's a change from their DNA. But I also feel like it's kind of what they have to do this year. It just opens you up to, I think, more mistakes. But I don't have a theory on the play action. I mean, I know his time to throw is up this year, the amount of time from the snap to when it gets out of his hands. And, that is a stat that is tied to play action, right? If you are a play action, if you run a play action play, you're probably going to hold that a little bit longer. But they've always been really good at it. So this is where you started to ask me about Ricky Pearsall earlier, and I interrupted you to make another point. But I do think, aside from just the amazing story that it is and what it must do for a locker room, just to see a guy like that be able to come back when everybody was so concerned about him, 2 months ago. I also think he can probably help them this year a little more than I thought they would need him to.
I agree. I think he could be the secret in the red zone. I really do. Just because he's such a great route runner and his feel is good, and you can see that me and you were standing next to each other in minicamp when Purdy started to show this momentum with Pearsall. And you could see it, and then it got halted, and then of course he got shot. But I mean, we're going to find out how much field time they've been able to get in there on the field together as far as reps. And if it's a significant amount, I would expect those guys to hit the ground running because they're perfectly fit for one another. Pearsall's a perfect receiver for Brock. Let's finish with this because I do want to finish on this, and we appreciate you spending some time with us. To me, the guys that have to be absolutely applauded today are John Lynch, Tariq Ahmad, R.J. Gillen, Dom, Justin Chabot in the college scouting department. The Niners draft. I mean, I think, Pearsall has yet to show what he's got, but believe me, he's got something. And then Renardo is a big time player. Pooney's a plug and play player. Cowing has gotten off to a slow start, but he's a player. Mustafa's a legit player. Garendo, Bethune, Evan Anderson. Nobody knows anything about Evan Anderson. He's a player. And there's others. I mean, this kid Pline is a terrific tight end prospect. Mordecai, Drake Nugent. Some of these, 2 years from now, we're going to look back at this draft and go, whoa, look at all the guys that they got out of that draft. That was an amazing draft. This last game, was very impressive for the rookies. Of the rookies you've seen with the Niners, who's the guy that impresses you the most?
Well, other than Pooney, it feels like you almost have to remove Pooney, right?
Yeah, other than Pooney, because he's just been
he plays every snap.
He's a plug and play starter. Yeah, he's phenomenal.
I think Mustafa is got to be my answer there. Cowing has not looked as good on punt return in the regular season as he looked not just in the preseason games but in preseason practice, and it's. I think one thing we don't talk about with Ricky Pearsall is he may be able to help you on punt return too. But I got to go with Mustafa. You're right. The game the other day was a John Lynch game, like a front office game. Renardo Green has the pick. Mustafa has the pick and a big hit. Obviously, Pooney played really well. So that was very impressive.
Yoon had the fumble recovery, I believe. And
yep.
Anderson had a high grade from PFF.
Anderson,
all these guys balled out.
Yeah, and when you remove the minimums, which is like saying when you include pinch hitters with everyday players, Anderson's one of the highest graded interior linemen in the NFL right now.
How about that, huh?
So that, but anyway, I shouldn't even say that because removing the minimums is like as doing a show once a week is different than doing a show 5 days a week,
right?
Or 14 shows a week like Larry Krueger does. But
I had this incredible segment once. Okay, yeah, fine.
Yeah, exactly. So
do it 5 days a week.
But Larry,
I know what you're saying.
It is one of the key differences between the Niners and the Chiefs in the last 4 years. Is how many as Patrick Mahomes got expensive, or when Patrick Mahomes got expensive, and as their team got more expensive, they relied more on the production from their draft. And when you go back to the previous 3 drafts, 2021, 2022, and 2023, the Chiefs got significantly more production out of their drafts than the 49ers did. Overall, in those 3 drafts, those picks played in 63% of the Chiefs' games. That's 15% more than the number of games the Niners players drafted in that stretch played. And when you go to the top 4 rounds, like the money rounds, the guys the Chiefs picked in those 3 drafts have played in 74% of the available games to them. That is significantly more than the Niners, who only got 51% of the games available to the players in those 3 drafts. So the Chiefs have drafted depth at a much higher rate at a time when their guys got more expensive. And this is now the same point in time for the 49ers as we're on the precipice of a big Brock Purdy contract. So you can't sit and cry about, some of those drafts, not Drake Jackson or whoever, those drafts not working out for the Niners. This draft and the next draft and the next draft, those are going to be the drafts that determine. That people talk about, is this the last dance? If Brock Purdy is the franchise quarterback that he appears to be, and you draft well in the next 2 years, then the window is wide open to be a Super Bowl contender. Yeah,
no, seriously, drafting well, vitally important. Guy, you're amazing, dude. We love doing the podcast with you, the YouTube show. Love catching you on the tube. When can people catch you next? What's your next game?
This week, UCLA at Rutgers. Larry,
nice.
They've been paying
Piscataway, huh?
They've played 260 years of football, those two, and they've never met. So this is history in the making, Larry.
Bring a jacket.
It's funny. I was texting Lund today. I said, I think I might have to, because he's like, how's the season going? And I said, I think I might have to buy a coat.
Exactly.
I don't have a coat.
It's already starting to get cold in the Midwest. You can see it in the Big Ten games. Hey, Guy, awesome stuff, man. If this were a stream, we would be 25% of the way through. But since it's the radio, I got a jet. But right, we'll talk soon.
Later. Yeah, you could tell that Larry's super into that rearranging a Saturday. 9 a.m. UCLA. Rutgers, 9 a.m. All right. Before I get to some of the weekend games that I'm looking forward to and some of the implications on Sunday, it's time for the Prize Picks segment brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code GUY when you sign up. I love playing Prize Picks. You will love it. Use the code GUY. You can click on a link in the description. Go to prizepicks.com. Get the app. When you make a lineup, you put in $5, you make a lineup, you'll immediately get $50 bonus money right into your account. You don't have to win that first lineup. You just get $50 for making a $5 lineup. So here we go. I've been rolling. I'm looking here. I've got $1,400 in winnings in the account now. So things have been going well. Let's make a new lineup, a couple of lineups for this weekend. Jared Goff, we're going to go more than 249.5 passing yards against the Vikings. This Lions offense is cooking. 315 against Dallas, 292 against Seattle. Brian Flores and the Vikings are only giving up 15 points per game. They're 30th in passing yards allowed per game. Didn't think that was going to happen, did you? 263. There's a little twist. Lions are a better team, taking over the division. That's what it starts with. No Aiden Hutchinson, so maybe they got to score a little more. So I think the Lions are going to hand the Vikings their first loss of the year, even though the Hutchinson injury hurts. So I'm going more there. All right, next up, Bo Nix. I'm going Bo Nix more than 26.5 rushing yards in this game against the Saints. Sean Payton against his old team. Saints have lost 4 straight, badly need a win at home. Hostile environment. Nix is throwing some picks, so I don't know if he's seeing it well, but he's really athletic. Short week. I think he can break out and run a little bit. This is what you do when you're just trying to scrappy, short week, find a way to win, that you run the quarterback a little bit. So I think he's going to run for more than 26.5 yards. And then finally for this lineup, those of you who know, I love, and I did this last week, I had on Monday Night Football less than 1.5 punts inside the 20 for the Jets punter, and it helped me win $103, whatever it was. So now I'm going Will Lutz. 6.5 kicking points. I'm going more. I'm sorry, 7 kicking points. I'm going more. This is a field goal game for the Broncos. So I'm going more there. We're going to go 50 to win 250 on that lineup. I could have flex played it which is always kind of the smart play if you want to hedge a little bit. But that's come on, I want to hedge a little bit. All right, next lineup. All right, we're gonna go. I'm gonna combine what I did with Goff in that other lineup with Amon-Ra, and I'm gonna go more than 76.5 receiving yards against the Vikings. Right, Vikings give up the third most yards. I already talked about that. Lions may want to establish the run, but this is a primetime guy. All right. 6.2 catches per game, almost 58 yards per game. The volume is there. I think this is going up this week. So this feels like a counterintuitive pick, but I think sometimes those work. Next up, I'm going to go Geno Smith against the Falcons. Now, you know that I don't love the Falcons, but the Seahawks, but I think this is the type of game where Geno puts up some numbers. The Seahawks pass the ball 68% of the time. That's more than anybody in the league. He's averaging over 40 attempts per game. The Falcons are allowing a 73% completion percentage. That's 32nd in the league. They have the lowest sack percentage in the NFL, 2.5%. They're the 10th best in passing yards allowed, but Geno has the most passing yards. So I got a dome track meet here, a little shootout with him and Kirk Cousins. And that's what I like there. And then let's just go. I went less than people thought I was crazy the other day on Jaden Daniels passing yards. I'm going to go more Jaden Daniels passing yards, 243.5 this week. So I like that against the Carolina Panthers. This is a big game for the Commanders. And so there you go. That's how easy and quick it is to make a couple of lineups. Throw some baseball in there, some hockey. Now that NBA is starting, you can go do that and go enjoy. Prize Picks, use the code guy, make a $5 lineup when you sign up, and you'll immediately get $50 into your account. So have a blast. Have fun with that. All right, here's what's coming up this weekend. The NFL slate has some pretty good games. Now, the Niner game is the big game, but there's some other really interesting games in here. And I want to go through a couple of them. One is that game I mentioned, Seahawks and Falcons, because it's just, here's Seattle at 3-3, right? And people love talking about every year. It's like, oh, maybe Seattle is a team to beat this year. No, they're not. But they can screw things up for you. If they lose to Atlanta this week, Atlanta's 5-2. You just start thinking about the NFC. There's still a long way to go. That's what I talked about earlier in the week. But there's just some teams, like if Minnesota were to win this week, I don't think they are, but what if they win? They're 6-0. They are could potentially back their way into the playoffs, even if they stumbled down the stretch. So that Seattle-Atlanta game is interesting. Houston and Green Bay is obviously a very interesting game, right? There's a big difference between 5-2 and 4-3 for Green Bay. Houston, are they going to be 6-1? I like Green Bay here in this spot to be 5-2 and make things more. They make things more interesting the more they win in the NFC. And as I said the other day, the NFC North really hasn't started playing itself. Miami and Indy, I like Miami this week to get to 500 instead of being 2-4. Detroit and Minnesota. I've said many times, I think Minnesota, I think most people agree with this. Detroit is the team. Even with the Hutchinson injury, that's a greater threat to the Niners. And I know the Niners went to Minnesota and lost. The one caveat to that would be if the Niners win the division, right, they got to go win the NFC West, then you might be hosting an NFC North team in the first round of the playoffs. And so which NFC North team might you might be facing an NFC North team in the second round. You might be going to one of those places. You want to go to Detroit? That's loud. You want to go to Minnesota? Skull? No, I don't want to go to Minnesota. Sunlight coming through the roof, that sort of thing. So not a lot of great options there. So the NFC North, you could end up playing them in the first two rounds of the playoffs. So it's really a division, as we always do, keep a close eye on that division, but that's a big one. Philly and the Giants, big game for Philly. Raiders play home games that feel like road games, and then they go to SoFi and play a game that finally feels like a home game for them. They go play the Rams, who are 1-4. McVay, he thought about going to TV last year. Is he going to think about TV again this year? The Raiders are the same. The Devontae, as a Bulldog myself, Devontae Adams choosing to spend years of his prime with the Raiders was one of the craziest moves any NFL player has ever made when they had the choice. He grew up wanting to be, I love the Raiders, wanted to be a Raider, respect, love my time with the Raiders. Man, what a disappointment. But, I mean, not shocking. So now they're in the post-Devontae era. Are they going to be in the post-Max Crosby era anytime soon? Do full rebuild? Seems kind of crazy, but they could get so much for him. Interesting game there. And then the other game, I mentioned this, like this is not normally on the radar, but the Commanders, right? The Panthers are not normally on the radar, but with Andy Dalton, any game can be semi-competitive with them. Like last week it was, the final score was not indicative last week that the Panthers were in that game. So Washington's 4-2. What's interesting to me about it is just the big picture for the Commanders. Their schedule coming up, they've got a chance to be 8-2. Going to Philadelphia on Thursday Night Football, Week 11. They play Carolina this week. They play the Bears at home next week. They go to the Giants, who, you know, are just consistently one of the worst watches in the league right now. And then they play Pittsburgh at home. So it is not even conceivable that Washington's 8-2 going into Philly on Thursday night, which would be really awesome. And then you got the 2-4 Jets playing the 4-2 Steelers. Like who would have, if you would have said before the year, these two teams are going to play, one's 4-2, the other's 2-4, with Devontae Adams showing up. And then we got a Monday doubleheader. Chargers, Cardinals, and Ravens, Bucks. Kind of some odd matchups that are kind of cool. So that's what's going on this week. Yeah. And your boys get here. I'll tell you the other thing. Indiana plays Nebraska this weekend, which is a game I'm dialed in on because I love Nebraska. I love Nebraska football. I'm very into Indiana football this year. Indiana's unbeaten. Next week, I'm calling Washington at Indiana. So, you know, just selfishly, I'm just saying, like, I love the Huskers. But if Indiana was undefeated hosting the Washington Huskies next week, and I was there for that, I'd be pretty fired up about that. So anyway, that's what's up. Okay, everybody. Thanks for hanging. We'll talk soon. See you after Niners Chiefs on YouTube. And have a great day. Have a great day.